Wise Words presents Denzil Nurse. What does it mean to belong? To stand at the crossroads of identity, heritage, and ambition, and yet feel the weight of unseen barriers. Denzil Nurse, a man of British upbringing, but Barbadian roots and African legacy, has spent a lifetime navigating these questions. Born in 1944, his story is one of resilience, defiance, and unshakable vision in the face of a system that too often told him, this far, but no further. From the sting of racial slurs to the quiet battles against the glass ceiling, Denzil's journey exposes the fractures in a society slow to change. Yet his voice is not one of surrender. It's a rallying cry, a call for education that tells the whole story. For communities to rise, not to just survive. For dignity to outlast discrimination. This is more than just an interview. It's a blueprint for justice, a testament to the power of servant leadership, and a challenge to us all. How will we rewrite the future? Join us as Denzil shares his truth, his wounds, but his unyielding hope. These are Denzil's wise words.
I would describe my identity as British, of Barbadian descent, and African heritage. All three of those have impacted to mold me into what I am, my identity. So, British, Barbadian, of African heritage. It feels secure, but also insecure. Secure in the sense that I'm part of the British establishment, but insecure in the fact that I'm of African descent. I don't feel part of the British way of life. The country, I accept the country. I accept Britain as that part of me that gives me that security. I don't feel that the country accepts me because of how I'm portrayed as an African or of African descent in an otherwise British environment. Up to the last 10 years of the 51 years that I've been in Britain, up to that point, I had a sense of belonging. Lack of opportunities, the glass ceiling, and other entrapments have eroded that sense of belonging. To tell the truth, I hanker back to the Caribbean and to Africa because I see that as my where I can be more stable and more secure, really. In Barbados in those days, when it rains, you shelter from the rain, you know. And as I was coming up the hill, going up to the nursing home, it started to rain. And I went under this lady's porch to shelter from the rain. And she came out and saw me. And she said, "What are you doing?" This is in 1966, 67. She said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm sheltering from the rain." She went back inside, got a bucket of water, came back and threw it over me. And she said, "You're wet now, off you go." Now, that's one point. The point that follows on that from that is that I had no recourse. I couldn't go to the police. I couldn't go to anyone because the laws were not in place at that time to protect me, you know. And I had to go through those kinds of behaviors for years before the law came into place that I can go to the police and say, this lady did that or the other. Before, the police would have said, well, it's understandable. And they have always said that, you know. The African descent community professionals, they need to have an equality alongside the same professionals in the host community. For some reason, and I can expand on that, the credibility is dumbed down. For example, a lawyer or barrister who is fighting a case, that person is not given the authority to go further into the case as much as a person from the host community. And the reason for that is because they do not see that black professional having the wherewithal to go further into the case. So that is dumbed down. And that holds good right across the professions. I came up as a nurse. I did nursing. I got as qualified as my white colleague. But when I was going for the post up, which is charge nurse and senior nursing officer, my superintendent said to me, I do not know whether my white colleagues will want to take orders from a black officer. And that was the glass ceiling that was placed on my profession, even though I was just as qualified as the next white person. The glass ceiling that I encountered in the 60s and 70s has not gone. It has, you could say it's gone on the ground, but I would say that it has been covered more subtly. And that people are aware that they can't be blatant and openly racist, but that doesn't stop the person from walking the other side of the street or ostracizing you. And there are no laws to protect either me or that person against that attitude. If I had to give a view of the education system in Britain, which is supposed to be to educate the whole community, not just the black community, the whole community, I would say that it's overall it's biased, and it's biased towards protecting the history of the country. Now, the history of the country is not all it's cracked out to be. It is covered or blighted by all the negative things around capitalism. And as a result of that, the education system in Britain only portrays that positive part of Britain's history. The negative part is either dumbed down, subdued, or ignored. Now, that is not fair on the African descent community or any minority community, and it's certainly not fair on the host community because they are only seeing one side of the coin. How can they then give a balanced view or have an equal balance of how they should move forward in their lives? Over the years, there have been a number of equality acts in favor of bringing a balance to the education system for minority communities, least of all the African descent community. And I can remember the 1966 Equalities Act, which brought in positive actions for minority community, and these were all accepted. What had happened is that even though they were accepted, they were sparsely implemented. And that holds good for all of the other acts along the way, right up to, and I can remember 5 years ago when I think it was 2007, I was working in Liverpool at the time, and an act came out where it was compulsory to put African history on the curriculum in schools. Everybody sort of embraced it, but it has never been implemented. Never been implemented. And that continued the imbalance of the education system. My view on the fact that I'm black, which would make me think that I'm held back, depends really on a number of factors. My confidence, my education, my drive and ambition, and yes, those things. Now, there are some people who would say, it don't matter if I'm black. If I have the drive and I have the ambition, I will succeed come what may. And I will succeed whether it's here or somewhere else. There are other people who would say, you are not going to hold me back, whatever you do. Because if I can't succeed with you, I will succeed with them, with that person. And that is very much dependent on my ambition and my confidence. Now, if I don't have those, I will very easily fall back on my color as an excuse. It depends on the person, and it depends on their drive and ambition and confidence, whether they want to blame their color or use their color in a positive way. You know, some people can say, I'm black and I'm going to show you. Obama did that. You know, there are other key politicians and people in society that's done that, despite their color. Personally, I would say it's not because I'm black that it's holding me back, but there are other people who personally will say that. And they will say that because there are other reasons or other things that they cannot put in place that will negate that blackness. So it really does depend on the person and their confidence and confidence in themselves. Let me give you an example. Up to 2009, I would say that I was not a pretty confident person. Um, and it wasn't until I was headhunted to do a piece of work for the European Union that I realized that my worth was was worth more than I thought it had. Um, I was asked to present my work in the European Parliament, and up to that point, I sweated because I didn't think I was worthy. I didn't think I was confident. I didn't think what I was going to say would be of any value. And then I spoke to, he was then the Chargé d'Affaires for Sweden. And I told him what my fears were and things like that. And he looked at me and said, the people you're going to talk to has not gone through the experiences, but will want to know what those experiences are from you. Go ahead and tell them. And that was a changing, that was a turning point in my life. One of the disservice that we as African descent community have given to ourselves is the fact that we do not appreciate our brotherliness, our neighborliness, our affinity to one another, to support and to and to help and assist in our development. My theory on that is that our masters have done a very good job on us in indoctrinating us into a mindset along service to others, and at the expense of service to self and our kin. And us as African descent community have got to have a vision of who we are and our identity, and work towards changing where we are now for a different mindset and a different identity. It may be that we may have to take ourselves out of the Britishness to strengthen ourselves and come back into that situation, but do that from a position of strength. At the moment, we are ensconced into a British state of mind that do not allow us to extricate ourselves from, as Bob Marley said, from the mental slavery. We are still in there. We still think that the white is right. My concerns for the African descent youth in this community right now and in the future is not good. Not good in the sense that there are a number of challenges, both in this community and the European, the wider European context. The fact that the young people, the African descent youth, do not have any connection to their roots in the Caribbean or Africa, and their only experiences are in this community, with all its glass ceilings and its lack of opportunities and things like that, tells me that the future needs to be fought for as vociferously as we fought for our future in the 50s and 60s. There are a number of situations and challenges that fill me with fear. Movement of the far right in Europe. Certain people say there's no black in the Union Jack. The same glass ceiling that you experience in this country is extended into Europe. There have been many regeneration programs for urban renewal that have been not earmarked, but can be put in place to help for the development of the African descent community. They have been drawn down on that premise, but have been diverted elsewhere. If you reflect on all of the regeneration programs and the urban renewal programs, none of them have benefited the African Caribbean descent community. My definition of hope in respect of the African descent community is one of being able to secure the security that the community needs for its development. And that may mean that we as an African descent community may have to set up various structures and infrastructures around education, commerce, economics, and culture in order to give ourselves the security that would purchase a sense of hope. I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic for the African descent community, providing it recognize where it is at the moment, where it want to be, and that those questions have got to be asked and answered, and be ambitious to be able to meet that goal. Now, that goal may be that we have to set up our own infrastructure in order to give ourselves some hope, really. I hope that the historians in 30 years' time would say that here is a community that has gone through challenging times, but has been resilient enough to take on a sense of hope in wanting to get to the promised land, so to speak. And the promised land could be one of being able to help ourselves, be able to be self-sufficient, and be able to trade in the widest sense of the word. Trade our humanity, trade our sense of worth, trade our principles and our values. And but that means that we have to have a confidence in ourselves and a self-worth in order to be able to trade with the other. For over the last 30 years, we have depended on the schools to provide the basic education around the truth and justice of what is to be done and what the African descent community can do to help itself. And that means that the education that is presented would have to be based on history, the right, true history. That has got to be corrected. I think the universities can play a role in correcting that, in the sense that it needs to put out to the feeder schools what the feeder schools needs to put the basic things, so that by the time the person gets to university, they can build on the truth, on the justice of what they have learned in schools. The university, therefore, needs to write that curriculum for the feeder schools. We expect, that's all I have to say, we expect, and the feeder schools will have to put that in place so that by the time they get to university, there will be a curriculum to take it forward in the development of the education going forward. There are a number of challenges that have existed since the 60s that are still here right now. But these challenges, I list them to you, but these challenges have been either masked or subdued or gone underground or are more subtle in their delivery. And I have to start with racism. There was blatant racism in the 60s. It is now, it is still there, but it's more subtle. There are still discriminatory practices, but it's now under the guise probably of nepotism. We will not experience anyone blatantly calling us names, and indeed they will probably still do now, but they are conscious of political correctness. So what I have to say is that things that have been prevalent in the 60s are still here, but under new management, so to speak. There are a number of challenges that I experience alongside the struggles that I encounter on a day-to-day basis. And I have to depend on my humanity in order to keep my dignity and keep my worth and keep my my self-esteem, because if I don't, the struggle will overwhelm it. And I'll go back to the Jamaican saying, where there's life, there's hope. Change. I see myself as an instrument for change, and I practice that as I call it a servant leader. You are you change. Mahatma Gandhi said it. Your change starts with yourself, and once you can change and you can have that as an example to others, then it rubs off on the next person. That change rubs off on the next person. But you have to be that instrument for change. And you have to be that change maker, that servant leader. I'm always a service to others, even though people see me as a leader. I'm always humble. I'm always there delivering this service.